man must do his bit.
Hi and welcome to another edition of Public Interest. We're so happy that you can join us. I'm Gabriela Patram. With me is former President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. David Granger. Sir, welcome, and it's always a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be back on your program, and let me start by taking this opportunity to wish all Guyanese a reflective day. Today, the 20th of August, marks the 198th anniversary of the Demerara Revolts in 1823 on the east coast of Bachelor's Adventure. And as every school child should know, about 200 Africans were killed on that day, the 20th of August, 1823, at Bachelor's Adventure, when what is called the Demerara Revolt started. Others were executed later on, as you know, in Georgetown. But the main killing field was at Bachelor's Adventure on this day, 20th of August. So I hope Guyanese reflect on the high price that is paid for their freedom.
Sir, thank you very much for that. As it relates to today's program, I want us to talk a little bit as it relates to security policy, tackling crime, and so forth. And my first question is, the PPP administration determined that the causes of crime arose from certain factors. How valid are the basis of the administration's security policy?
We know that in April, the first announcements were made about the so-called Regional Joint Support Team.
Yes.
And we heard from the Minister of Governance, and we heard from the Minister of Home Affairs. But it was only last week that we heard about the motivation for the Regional Joint Support Team and the policy which was underlying the whole concept of national security. And that was the most disturbing thing, not the fact that 700 million were being provided for one purpose or the other, but the rationalization was extremely disturbing. And what did we learn? We learned that they're going to build 3 new prisons, not 3 colleges or 3 hospitals, but prisons at Lusignan, one of the busiest highways in Guyana, the East Coast Demerara Highway. We learned also that the policy was focusing on children in single-parent families. I thought that was quite strange. Many Guyanese families are single-parent, but what is the advantage of living in a household with an abusive father or an abusive mother? And if either one is prepared to be single, well, so be it, for the welfare of the child. But there's nothing intrinsically wrong with living in a single-parent family. And then we hear about the people in the lower end. Apparently, the perception is that lower-class people are more likely to be involved in crime. What happens here in this type of analysis is that the real causes of crime, that is the gun running, the narco trafficking, the people smuggling, the bribery and corruption, these are not crimes that are committed by children of single-parent families. These are not crimes that are committed by poor people. These are rich people's crimes. But there's nothing coming out of the PPP about a security strategy which would prevent drugs from coming in. In fact, they took the trouble to abolish the National Anti-Narcotics Agency, and the drugs are flowing into the country more easily. So I think the average citizen is left to wonder what this entire security policy is based on, and also how the Regional Joint Support Team is going to function. I don't doubt that we need new prisons, but they're going to build a new women's prison. One of my objectives was to get as many women out of prison as possible to get back to their families. And some of the offences, 2 joints of ganja or something, don't warrant custodial sentences. And in fact, in the SQO, I was able to remove all of the girls from the New Opportunity Corps. So I think they're heading in the wrong direction. The PPP is looking at prisons, they're looking at targeting children of single-parent households, they're looking at people at the lower end of the spectrum, and I think they're stigmatizing poor people. They're assuming that poor people are criminals, but a lot of the crimes, the bribery and corruption, the trafficking, are not done by poor people, and they're sometimes the victims. If you look at things like what's happening in Guyana today, we've had two very well-publicized execution murders. These murders are unlikely to have been committed by persons who are from single-parent households. In both cases, they are likely to have had some connection with the narcotics trade. So if you're looking to stop crime, stop transnational crime, stop smuggling of cocaine, stop people smuggling, stop trafficking in persons, stop gun running, and you'll find that the petty criminals on the street don't have guns. You got the guns come across the border, the cocaine comes across the border. And once you get drugs in the country, you're going to have violence. So that was the amazing thing about this crime strategy, that we're seeing a replay of what happened 20 years ago. We've seen this movie before. Some sort of joint support team is going to go after poor boys who might just have committed petty crimes. And we've seen this before. People are being stigmatized, people are being stereotyped. And it is my assessment that if the PPP pursues this line of action, this line of reasoning, a lot of more people are going to die in this country. It's a bad, the bases are bad, the premises are bad, and the assessment is bad. And I believe the outcome of the PPP security strategy will be bad, will be harmful to Guyana.
But sir, based on information that is in the press and so forth, the functions, the formation, and the funding for this regional joint support team seem to be advanced. In your opinion, what role will this law enforcement team meant to perform or will perform?
As I said a little while ago, I think even the Minister of Governance and the Minister of Home Affairs seem to be a little uncertain themselves.
Okay.
Reading carefully, it seems that one of the areas of operation will be Etringban. Well, Etringban is a long way from Evelary, and I never regarded Etringban as being a criminal hot point, a zone of criminality. And I think strategic issues have to be investigated, have to be examined, and the strategic issues are essentially rooted in transnational crime. Now, there's no evidence that Etringban, which already has a military outpost, which already has a police outpost, is itself a flashpoint, a criminal flashpoint. And to the extent that the regional joint support team is going to be based at Evelary and Etringban, these are the first two names that have been mentioned, is a bit surprising. What function there to perform? The public has been led to believe that the function will be law enforcement. Law enforcement is a police function. It is not a defense force function. And unfortunately, the one photograph that's appeared in the media so far shows policemen shooting. They're not patrolling, they're not counseling, they're not conducting community policing duties, they're shooting. So that seems to be an important function of the proposed regional joint support team. I think we're all left to wonder. Nobody knows for sure what's happening. We know that money has been voted. We got the people as a majority in the National Assembly. We know that people have been recruited. There are photographs, and we know that some form of training is going on, and there's some form of organization. Whether the Guyana Defense Force is the best place is a matter of some doubt. I don't think so. I think that we have to look at the strategic criminal scenario. And as far as I'm concerned, transnational crime is one of our greatest threats. You cannot establish a force, establish an agency without examining the threat. Otherwise, what are you providing money for? What you're training people for? You know, to simply go out there and shoot? Well, my answer to your question is that the policies of that support team and of the government are still quite murky. They're quite obscure. And no minister so far has been able to provide the public with a reasonable excuse, a reasonable explanation about how this
clear functions.
What has been done so far and what it is intended to do in future.
Sir, on that note, I don't think anyone could ever forget the troubling times between 2000 and 2010, and where we had the Target Special Squad. Is this new team, or how is this new team similar to the old squad? To that old squad? Is there any
I hope not.
similarities?
I mean, the Target Special Squad, for those of us who were aware and alive at that time, you know, is without equal. It was a gross aberration. It's probably the worst thing that ever came out of the Guyana Police Force. As you know, during that period, what we call the Troubles, we had about a dozen massacres, you know. And even now, you go to Bartek, you'd see this ugly monument. Go to Ivler, you see an uglier monument. Go to Luzignan, go to Buxton. These are monuments to what happened during the Troubles. There were 1,431 murders during Mr. Daggio's presidency between 2000, those years you call 2000 and 2010. And as I said, hardly a month would pass without some mass killing, you know, at Natu's Bar or somewhere else. No, we know that the serious violence started in April 2002. It is true that the persons escaped from the Georgetown prison violently at Mashamani in February, but there was a lull after February. And in April, the Target Special Squad went into the village of Buxton. And as a result of that midnight visit, a person called Shaka Blair was shot dead in his bedroom. And it is after Shaka Blair's killing that serious violence started in this country. Now, that is the notoriety, that is the legacy, the atrocity that we knew as the Target Special Squad. The emphasis now should be on recognizing that we do have two forces which need help, the Guyana Defense Force and Guyana Police Force. They need re-equipping, they need reorganizing, but they do not need a new Target Special Squad. Would I compare the two? I would not like any force to fill the place of that old Target Special Squad. It was abolished, and thank God it was abolished. What we need now is a well-trained, well-equipped police force and defense force. As far as I'm concerned, the duties of the two organizations are separate, are distinct. From time to time they may cooperate, but there is no reason for policemen to be subordinate to the GDF, and there's no reason for soldiers to be subordinate to the police. They have separate functions to perform. And in previous conversations, we've discussed those functions. We have 3,000 kilometers of border, get the soldiers out there maintaining the security of our borders, get the policemen enforcing the law. But the two functions are not one and the same. And I don't think the police should be encouraged to do military functions, and definitely the defense force should not be encouraged to do police functions. But as far as the target special squad is concerned, good riddance, and we don't want another target special squad in Guyana. We don't want another target special squad in Guyana, ever.
Sir, do you think that this regional joint support team is necessary? I ask you that because this team has been described as being part and not parallel to the Guyana Police Force. Like you mentioned just now, it has both the GDF and the Guyana Police Force have their functions.
Well, there is ambiguity there because to whom does it belong? Who are the commanders? Are the commanders police officers? Is it part of the police force, like the band or F Division or whatever it is? Or is it separate and distinct? We have not heard, I have not heard the Commissioner of Police speak about this matter at all. If it is a unit of the Guyana Police Force, leave it there. Don't speak about jointness. The so-called Joint Services Council is not a statutory body. It is not a legal entity. It is a form of cooperation between the two forces. It has no legal authority. It has no foundation in the Constitution or in statute. So what I would like to say is that you should not attempt to create a force that is outside of the Guyana Police Force if it is to be involved in law enforcement. If it's to be involved in defense, like the Guyana People's Militia is another matter. The Guyana People's Militia is legal, it is under the Guyana Defense Force. But the Regional Joint Support Team, if it is to have a legal basis, a constitutional foundation, it must be under the Guyana Police Force. And the Commissioner of Police must have responsibility for that force. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no question of parallelism. It is just a question of organic membership of the Guyana Police Force. We don't have to get into any debate about parallel. We have a Guyana Police Force. We want to set up a law enforcement agency. Put that law enforcement agency under the Guyana Police Force. Finish. Let the Commissioner of Police speak to the people and tell us why it is necessary.
Sir, is there a deep state determining the direction of security policy? Because this Regional Joint Support Team has received widespread criticism because, as we've been discussing, lack of knowledge, lack of knowing exactly what their mandate is and so forth. Is there a deep state determining the direction of the security policy?
It is difficult to escape the conclusion that there is a deep state. There are people who are unelected, unknown, unofficial, who are determining policy. I would like to hear from the Commissioner of Police what is going on, and I'm not hearing from him. I would like to see some prospectus or some organizational format so that we can know what is going on. There is a hidden agenda, quite simply, behind this policy, the security policy. We don't know whether people in the government service, we don't know whether elected officials are privy to what is going on. Listening to the Minister of Home Affairs or the Minister of Governance, we have not been able to gain any depth, any intellectual depth from what they said about this force. They might very well be strangers to the plans that are being made. And this would lead me to believe that there is a deep state, that there is a group of people, unelected, unknown to most of us, who are making these decisions, deciding, what training will be given, how they will be deployed, and how much money is to be provided. These are things, which are still unknown. And who is making these decisions, I cannot say. But it is a worrying development, and I believe that for any security organization, any security agency to function, there must be public trust. And the people of Guyana will not trust people they don't know. They see these things coming up, and so why should I trust this regional joint support team? Why should I carry information to them? Why should I work with them or support them? We don't know who they're working for. And why should I believe that they're out to protect me and my family? And if there's no trust, it will fail. There was never any trust in the Target Special Squad in the early decade of this century. And there is no trust now in what is proposed to be the regional joint support team. And either they halt the development of that team or abolish it altogether, but give the people information so that as Guyanese we can all work together to keep our community safe. What is taking place now is very suspicious, and I think it's going to fail unless there is more candor, more openness, more frankness by the People's Progressive Party administration.
Sir, my final question to you is, over the past 22 years, there have been some engagements between Guyana and the UK. Could you share with us the effect of these engagements?
Those engagements are themselves subject of a completely different conversation.
Okay.
To start with, during Mr. Jaggio's presidency, engagement with the United Kingdom started. DFID, the Department for Foreign Development, Foreign Investment Development. Now, there had to be about a dozen different consultancies
Between the two countries?
Between United Kingdom and Guyana.
Okay.
Even up to my time, we had a security advisor who was actually working in the Ministry of the Presidency. Now, the engagements, I think were all above board. Many of us could recall seeing photographs of the president at that time sitting with Baroness Amos, visiting the Metropolitan Police. We thought he was sincere. But when the time came for a reform agency to be created, the head of the presidential secretariat threw it away. They felt it was irrelevant. And after going all that way, reaching an agreement, and then they walked away from the agreement. Next thing you know, Mr. Jaggio was seen in State House, sipping tea with Mr. Bernard Carrick. Even though at that time we knew that Carrick was on the investigation, and later on he went away to a correctional facility. But on the one hand, you're speaking to the United Kingdom, Baroness Amos. On the other hand, you're speaking to Bernard Carrick. And in the final analysis, the security sector reform plan, which had been signed, luncheon signed in dotted line with the British High Commission, was thrown out of the window and nothing was done. So it was all a farce. People expected that we would come out of the troubles and that we'd have an orderly development with the existing agencies, the Guyana Police Force at that time, to restore peace in Guyana, but it was not to be. What we want is a regular professional force. What we want is an orderly development, an orderly execution of police duties. And what we want is a force that would engender public trust. But the engagements with the British, I think, kept power and authority in the hands of the Guyanese people. So we were aware of what was happening. We were not subordinate to the British in any way. And we felt, at least up to my time in office, that the plans, if given opportunity to be implemented, would be successful. But that came at the end of about a dozen consultancies. And before we go forward, it is better to go back over that 20-year period between 1998 or thereabouts to 2018, 2019, to see what progress we have made. There are concrete plans. We could have a more safe society if those plans were implemented. The plans do not call for the loss of independence or autonomy by the Guyana Police Force. They do not call for the confusion that is now taking place in the public mind, this uncertainty. And we don't deserve what we're getting from the government in this regional joint support team. What we deserve is for the people, civil society, the forces, citizens of Guyana, the communities, could sit down and understand what will be happening at the central government level, the regional level, on the borders, at the community level. But right now, people are very fearful of what they hear about this regional joint support team. And it will not gain public support, it will be resisted. And I urge the government to pay attention to what people are saying and try to win their confidence by telling them more about this security plan. Right now, it is creating great anxiety and feeling of fear and loathing in the government of this country. But we don't need what is taking place now.
Well, sir, thank you very much for being on the program. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. You're going to come back next week, right?
Yes.
And to you, our viewers, we say thank you very much for joining us on behalf of all of us here at Public Interest. We continue to encourage you to follow all COVID-19 guidelines. I'm Gabriela Patram. Goodbye.